Hello everyone, Golden Nova here. Infinite Forbidden has finally been released in the OCG, which means it's time to crack open those packs and sup upon the delicious knowledge that lies within. And I can't think of a better starting point than today's subject. Hitting the scene with a look ripped straight out of Tetsuya Nomura's sketchpad, this mashup between Dante from Devil May Cry and Axel from The Kingdom Hearts is here to hunt down demons, grind them up for raw material, then forge an even more despicable devil from its components, the Fiendsmith. So let's get our rear end gear, max out that combo gauge, and get ready to show the world your slick moves. Strap in, cause this
party's getting crazy. Let's rock.
And now, a word about today's sponsor.
Hey everyone, Golden Nova here. Full-time YouTuber and part-time Fiendsmith. In fact, you've caught me in the middle of a job right now. What can I say? The economy. You know, between editing all these videos and editing Satan's chosen children into fine weapons and arms, means I hardly have time to edit myself up a good meal. Thankfully, Factors got my back. They basically handle everything for me. No planning, no prep. It basically just shows up at your door with all that stuff done for you.
All you have to do is pop these in the microwave for a couple of minutes and presto, they're ready.
Which is good, because I can't step away from the forge for too long. These puppies need constant attention.
Ow. 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 They also come in a variety of different meal plans. Just like how our fiendish foes come in many forms, from devil to demon to that person at locals who keep showing up with runic stun, you can adjust your meal plan to cover vegan, vegetarian, keto, and many more. So whether you're looking to keep a good handle on what you put in your body or have any specific fitness goals you're working on, you have full control.
That's way more control than I'm gonna have over this whole fiend-smithing thing. It turns out the souls of the unholy are pretty finicky. Speaking of which, how many gallons of holy water do you think it's gonna take to quench fiendish steel?
And in those plans, there's a lot to choose from, with over 34 dishes and more than 36 add-ons like smoothies, shakes, and desserts. There's even these little wellness shots which are full of vitamins to supplement your diet. And because they come in little bottles, you can drink them like little potions. As for the meals I picked this time around, I went with the tomato basil chicken risotto. And true to its name, the sauce was creamy and savory, the chicken was tender and delicious, and the included grape tomatoes were fresher than they had any right to be. I can even take the food right to my desk so I can get energized while staying focused on the job. I even had the time to look up that grape tomato was a real word and write it into the ad copy. What a dork. It's a meal so satisfying, it gives finishing up another weapon of infernal might a run for its money. And you can even get it for a screaming deal. Get 50% off your first Factor box and free wellness shots for life using my link. That means you can choose 2 free wellness shots from 3 available flavors for every order while you're an active subscriber. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. A big thank you to Factor for sponsoring today's video, and thank you for watching and supporting the channel. Now, I've got to go out and give this new beauty a test drive, but don't go anywhere, because I'm about to teach you everything you need to know about Fiendsmith. So, what's the deal with Fiendsmith? Well, they're a series of light attribute fiend monsters, and they love the number 6, as any true demonic denizen would. You'll see it and multiples of it crop up a lot over the course of this video, but mechanically we're a fusion deck that has a little Link spice to it. Basically, our fusions are continually upgrading forms of the Fiendsmith himself, while the Link monsters represent the various gadgets and weapons wielded by him, with many of our effects caring about how many Links we have attached to our monsters. A lot of the effects also care about light fiends in general, which means a couple very specific themes get a huge boost thanks to these cards. So get ready to hear about Magical Musket and Fabled later in the video. But we can't go anywhere without taking a big long look at the guest of honor, the Fiendsmith, a level 6 monster with 1800 attack and 2400 defense, and you can discard this card to add a Fiendsmith spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. You can target a Fiendsmith equipped card you control and a monster on the field and send them to the grave, and if this card is in your grave, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your grave into the deck or extra deck to special summon this card. Each effect is a hard once per turn, but unlike many self-revival effects that are like this, the Fiendsmith doesn't banish itself when it leaves the field after using it, meaning every turn you can recycle another light fiend to get you back your big dude, of which there are many applications. And because of its discard effect, turning it into any on-theme spell or trap card, fulfilling those requirements is going to be as easy as button mashing. And if that wasn't enough, it also gets to do a little Scrap Dragon impersonation, turning your equipped spells into removal. This is an outrageous card to kick off the theme, theme, and it's only gonna fly further off the rails from here. Especially when you find out this guy's real name. The Fiend Smith? No, the Fiend Smith. Next up, we have our first fusion, Fiend Smith Lacrimosa, a level 6 fusion monster with 2400 attack and defense that requires any 2 light fiend monsters as material. While on the field, monsters your opponent controls lose 600 attack, and if this card is fusion summoned, you can target a light fiend monster in your grave or banishment and either add it to your hand or special summon it. And if this card is sent to the grave by any means, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your grave into the deck or extra deck to burn your opponent for 1200 damage. Ooh, getting a lot of Long Yun flashbacks here. Lacrimosa is the Fiend Smith's first weapon, a big cannon with a sweet scrying eye attached for extra accuracy and spookiness. Oh, by the way, you're going to be seeing a lot of Christianity-themed names here, with Lacrimosa being part of a poem read at funerals, which makes the ghost lady in the art a little on the nose here. As for the card itself, it's grand. You can bring back one of the material used for the summon, or a different light fiend altogether while applying a pretty sweet debuff. Lacrimosa can also go toe-to-toe with the 3000 attack crowd with suppressing fire like that, and of course, having the ability to win in time is a great boon, and all while recycling your monsters. It may not provide spot removal or a board wipe, arguably some of the most canon-coded effects out there, but it's still an amazing bridge up to our next fusion, and puts in a lot of work by itself. You certainly won't find Lacrimosa lacking. Fiend Smith Dies Irae is a level 9 monster with 2800 attack and 2400 defense, requiring the Fiend Smith and 2 light fiend monsters as material. As a quick effect, you can negate the effects of a number of face-up cards on the field up to the total link ratings of the link monsters equipped to this card, until the end of this turn. If this card is sent to the grave, you can shuffle one other light fiend monster from your grave into the deck or extra deck to target a card on the field and send it to the grave. The Dies Irae is a poem that's usually read during funeral masses, and it describes the last judgment for when, God shows up, saves all of the redeemed, and casts all the sinners into the depths of hell. Very fun read. As our theme's current boss monster, it exemplifies what we want to be doing with our cards, equipping with those links, giving us that radical negation effect, and shuffling back our light fiends after our monsters get a mouthful of grave dirt. And it doesn't even care how it winds up there, so even if you send this directly from the extra deck right to the grave, if you have one other light fiend in there with it, your opponent can kiss one of their cards goodbye. The negation is also really sweet, because it works like Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. It doesn't target face-up monsters, but face-up cards. So you can chain it to something like Triple Tactics Talent to reverse the punish your opponent tried to inflict on you, while hitting a couple other juicy targets along the way. Honestly, the only issue with this card is that its attack is only a 400 point increase from its previous form, instead of the standard 600. Sorry buddy, you know the aesthetic rules, now it's your turn to go into the contraption. Fiend Smith Requiem is a Link 1 monster with 600 attack, requiring any light fiend monster as material, and you can only special summon copies of this card once per turn. During the main phase, as a quick effect, you can tribute this card to special summon a Fiend Smith monster from your hand or deck. You can also target a non-Link light fiend monster you control and equip this card to it from the field or grave, with an effect that gives the equipped monster a 600 attack boost. This monster is named for the Catholic Mass, the Requiem, though it has been used to describe a number of other funerary services. Now, currently, the only monster you can summon off of this effect is the Fiend Smith, but because the material is any light fiend, this means just about any other archetype with that type and attribute combination can use this to pivot into Fiend Smith cards. And while this means you won't be discarding it for its spell and trap search, barring some kind of self-compulse, by equipping Requiem, the Fiend Smith now has access to its removal effect. Historically, Link 1s have been very powerful, and this feels like it's gearing up to continue that tradition. In fact, you'll be hitting your opponent so hard with it that they'll be coughing up blood. Fiend Smith Sequentia is a Link 2 monster with 1200 attack, requiring any 2 monsters, including a light fiend monster, as material. During your main phase, you can fusion summon a fiend monster from your extra deck by shuffling materials from your grave into the deck. You can target a non-Link light fiend monster you control and equip this card from your field or grave to that monster as an equipped spell, with an effect that keeps your opponent from targeting the equipped monster with card effects. Sequentia is named for the chants that accompany the music for Requiems, which makes sense because this makes for a perfect monster to go into after you've made use of Requiem. It does a really good job at pumping out your own fusions. Heck, if you use 2 light fiends as material, that's Lacrimosa for you right there. But keep in mind that this can fusion summon any Fiend monster, just so long as all the material is in your grave. This means we can make Armatael the Chaos Phantasm, the Phantom of Fury mode specifically, Baphomet the mythical king of phantom beasts, Crimson Nova Trinity the dark cubic lord, all manner of DDDs and Fright Furs, Despians, and then you can just link it off for something else, or hard fuse it so it goes to the graveyard, and then you get to equip it to give targeting protection to one of your fiends, a fantastic combination with Dies Irae. But what I'm most looking forward to is what they plan to do with the implication that the Fiendsmith is responsible for making Despair from the Dark, which is historically a zombie monster. Looks like the Fiendsmith is dabbling in the most forbidden art of them all, mixing monster types. Alright, that does it for our monsters. Now it's time for the spells and traps, and we're kicking things off quite literally with Fiendsmith Tractus, a normal spell card that adds a light fairy monster from your deck to your hand, then you discard a card, and you can banish this card from your grave to fusion summon a Fiendsmith fusion monster from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand or field as material. Tracts are another part of the Roman Mass, but doing research I couldn't really discern what function it serves in the service, and by research I mean I looked up the page on Tracts on Fandom Wiki, which makes sense. Christianity is one of the strongest and most vocal fandoms out there. So because of the discard, this will always resolve as a -1, but that just means you'll have to make your search count. On theme, this of course means you can grab the Fiendsmith, so you can ditch it for the search of another spell or trap card. But when you put Light Fiend and Discard together, so you can get a big discard engine going. That's not to say you can't just discard the Fabled monsters you already have in hand, which is great because not all the Fableds have on discard effects, so you will sometimes want to have a bit of a diversion to get a plus off of. And on top of all of that, the Engrave Fusion effect isn't half bad either. While it is limited to only Fiendsmith fusions in contrast to Sequentia, this just frees up Sequentia to act as our off-theme fusions to really help get us on Tractus. Fiendsmith Sanctus is a quick play spell card that you can only activate if you have no monsters or if all face-up monsters you control are light fiends. You special summon one Fiendsmith token, which is a level 1 light fiend monster with 0 attack and defense. Also, you cannot declare attacks for the rest of the turn except with fiend monsters. And if any number of face-up Fiendsmith monsters you control are destroyed by a card effect while this card is in your grave, you can set this card. The name Sanctus comes from another prayer that's a part of a liturgy, which is another song that's part of these funerary masses. Repeatable token generation is pretty sweet, and all it costs is attacks with non-fiend monsters, in a deck that's built around the interactions of light fiends. There, I'm sure you'll find a way through these hard times. It's honestly a great way to go directly into Requiem, because now you're doing your whole combo line without even using your normal summon, making it very easy for Sequentia to get maximum value. In fact, one could argue it's the canon way Requiem is made. It's got the same bulging cyclopean eye as our little imps here. Even the mouth is pretty similar. Hey, do these two know that they're working for a dude that fashioned their cousin into a functional alchemy box? I think they deserve to know that before they sign the employment papers. Fiendsmith in Paradisum is a normal trap card that has you targeting a level 7 or higher light fiend monster you control and sending all other cards on the field to the grave except the targeted monster. And if your opponent special summons any number of monsters while this card is in the grave, you can banish this card to send a Fiendsmith monster from your deck or extra deck to the grave. The In Paradisum is the part of the liturgy that's sung as the body is taken out of the church, perfectly pairing with how you're going to take out the entire field with this effect. Now on theme, currently only Dies Irae is a proper target for this card, and outside of that, we don't fare much better. Of the valid targets, the only relevant ones are the Fabled Synchros that are big enough, and maybe Despian Quiritis, but I'm confident we'll get more targets printed for this in the future. The Grave effect is honestly much more interesting to me, because all of our Fiendsmiths have good Grave effects. VE can revive itself, Lacrimosa deals burn damage, and Dies Irae is non-destruction removal. And we, of course, have our Link monsters, which we can turn into equip spells from the grave. The big problem here is that the other two targets that we can search off of the Fiendsmith's in-hand spell and trap search are much stronger. But if you're in need of a reset button, it's really only a single tutor away. Just ignore the fact that the eyeball cannon is crying. It is feeling intense pain, but it doesn't have a soul, so you don't really have to worry about it, I think. Alright, now that we know all the cards, let's take a moment to learn our most basic combo. All we're gonna need is a copy of Fiendsmith Tractus, and a card for us to discard so we don't have to give up what we searched for. It doesn't matter what that card is, but if it has any synergy with being discarded, then you get yourself a nice little bonus. Activate Tractus, and search yourself the Fiendsmith, discarding it to add Fiendsmith Sanctus from your deck to your hand. We'll activate that card to make a token, linking it off for Requiem, and tributing it to summon another copy of the Fiendsmith. From here, we can equip the Requiem and pop it for some removal if need be, but once that's done, we shuffle the Requiem from grave back into our extra deck to summon back the other Fiendsmith. Then, we use the grave effect of Tractus, banishing it to fusion summon for Lacrimosa using our 2 Fiendsmiths. Then when fusion summoned, use its effect to bring back one of the Fiendsmiths. And from here, you've got yourself a few options. You can overlay V and Lacrimosa for a DDD Wave High King Caesar to get you some summon effect negations, or you can link them both off into Sequentia, shuffling back the 2 Fiendsmiths and the Lacrimosa to make Dies Irae. Then you can just equip the Sequentia from field right onto your new fusion for a quick double negate and some provided targeted protection. Alright, so that's all the info I have on Fiendsmith, but what do we do with them? At the moment, we don't really have much more of a game plan than make boss monster and interrupt our opponent's stuff until we chip away all of their life points, which isn't too dissimilar from most decks that are kinda aimless. Until we get a more fleshed out wave of support, Fiendsmith is here to throw its support behind other archetypes. So let's see what light fiends pair well with our fiendish Fabricator. We've already touched on Fabled, but the other light fiend theme that I've been really excited to tech with this is Magical Musket. Tractus represents every member of the main deck crew, and that means access to Max. We can use either of its ridiculous effects should our opponent have already established a board, and if we have another Magical Musket we can keep on board to enable our spell and trap activations, we can link Max off into Requiem to get the Fiendsmith. The quick play spell card Sanctus is another card we can activate to trigger our Musket monster's effect. And if we want to be really bonkers about this, the rarely used Mastermind Zachiel has a big enough level to target within Paradisum. It even clears out the Magical Musket Continuous Trap card if it becomes a nuisance. But it's not just archetypes, there are single monsters in diverse strategies that now have a dedicated search card, making them even more powerful. Magnificent Magic Hero Adusted Gold. But perhaps the most infamous card it's fated to search is Majesty's Fiend, a 1 tribute monster that prevents both players from activating monster effects. Hooray! Now, while our cards focus on the light fiends, there's a ton of fiend support out there that doesn't care about attributes. Is any of it good? Well, Tour Guide never stopped being a great normal summon, and it gives you access to a number of rank 3s. And if you play Fiendish Rhino Warrior to pair with it, that's another way you can fill up your grave with fiends. Heck, you can link both of them off into Muckraker at that point, sending any fiend that you want to the graveyard with Rhino Warrior, then summoning it out with Muckraker's effect. Salamander Catalyzer is a cool way to turbo out your fusions, and it recycles itself, which is pretty neat. But one of the best cards that we have access to is Unchained Soul Lord of Yama. This pivots you into an Unchained suite, while giving you more fiend revivals and removal. We also have a lot of rank 6 access, so what are our best targets? Well, you've probably already heard from me and everyone else on this platform about how you can make Beatrice to send transaction rollback and the Mayakashi turn skip card, so we're gonna just blaze right past that. Ptolemy M7 is a pretty cool way to be either recursive or offensive, and Wolo is an awesome way to hate on graveyards while building up some big stats. And number 39 Utopia Beyond is an often slept on pick. As long as negation has been removed from your opponent's board, summoning this basically wipes out your opponent's attack stats so you can run over them with anything. But if you want to combine spot removal with stealing, then you simply have to run Dampier Vampire Sheridan. Bestials fit that level 6 game plan pretty well. You even have the option of banishing your own cards if you need to, because Lacrimosa can summon back your light fiends from the banishment. Magnamut doesn't do much on its own, though it does get better the more Bestials you run, and Druisworm is something everyone has to watch out for when it's on the field. Lastly, there's Baldric, which can test the extra deck monster super types when they hit board. As for a silly tech pick, I've gotta give it up for Puppet Master. Since our Tractus line keeps our normal summon intact, we can use it to tribute over any of our special summoned monsters, then pay that 2000 life point toll to summon 2 more fiends out of our graveyard. They can't attack that turn, but if they're sticking around the field long enough for that to actually matter, something's gone horribly wrong. Also, it's a level 6, so it's totally on brand. Alright, so that's everything about Fiendsmith, but how does it stack up against the Nova scale? Novelty. Fiendsmith's largest claim to fame right now is the equips links for bonus effects territory, which is not really that groundbreaking if I'm being honest. We've seen a big push to put monsters in the back row in recent years, and we're also no stranger to equipping monsters to other monsters. We've been doing that since Unions. And while the Light Fiend pool could use the help, I don't know if it's enough to catapult this into a higher grade. So Fiendsmiths get a 2 in Novelty. Objectivity. A lot of what Fiendsmith can do is reliant on other cards. On its own, it makes a pretty big boss monster with some negation stapled onto it that's more vulnerable than most to Cosmic Cyclone. But as a theme that generates a lot of level 6 material, well, I already mentioned the Beatrice turn skip. Otherwise, the deck is fine, and it does great things to support our other Light Fiends, but for its potential to create some really frustrating non-games, Fiendsmith is getting a 4 in Objectivity. Versatility. While the theme largely works with Light Fiends, any deck that runs one, even as a singleton, basically gets full access to what the theme wants to do. Heck, even if you're just looking for a discard outlet, Tractus is a great one that can put the Fiendsmith, or whatever other Light Fiends you want, into your hand while dumping a card you want to see in the grave. Like, off the top of my head, Dark Worlds and Dangers work perfectly with discards. I don't want to overblow this, but Fiendsmith has a lot more splashability than it may appear to have on the surface, so I'm giving the deck a 3 in Versatility. Awesomeness. I've been enamored with this theme since it came out, but the more I think about it, honestly, the more underwhelmed I get. You've literally got a Devil Forge Master crafting weapons from their fallen foes, but our roster is so small right now that it doesn't really sell the fantasy of this decked out daredevil going toe-to-toe with forces from beyond our world. I'm sure this will get fixed up once we get more cards, and I certainly hope they push the envelope to do some wild things, but for now, it just feels sadly generic. So Fiendsmiths get a 3 in Awesomeness, meaning they walk away with a 12 out of 20 on the Nova scale. And that's all I have to say about Fiendsmith. This deck has a lot of potential. I feel really bad for giving it such a comparatively low score. I like what it's going for, it just needs another wave of cards to really amp up what makes the theme special. Though I guess we're saying that about everything nowadays, huh? I'm looking forward to seeing how this meshes with Fabled and Magical Musket, as well as any other wacky brews people forge in the meantime. I'm sure they'll come up with some very crafty ideas. But now, I want to hear what you all have to say. Did Fiendsmith land the Platinum Trophy, or do our blacksmithing skills need a bit more work? And which one's your favorite? I can't get over Tractus personally. This is easily carrying a lot of the theme's personality. I hope we get to see more of it. Let me know about your favorites down below, and if you haven't already, please be sure to like the episode if you liked it, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and share this video with somebody you know who loves Yu-Gi-Oh! It really does a lot to help me out. Today's episode was brought to you in part by Factor. Support the channel by using my link in the description to get 50% off your first box of delicious Factor meals, including those sweet wellness shots. Today's episode was also brought to you by my lovely patrons, including this month's illustrious Quasar Commanders, the Critic of Innocence and Upstairs Media, Nebula Navigators 3rd Dynasty, Ada Basilisk, Adam Zajdel, Owexitowa Hime, Anansi Dragon, Andrew Newman, Kane Senpai, Chibi Gohan, Christopher Fuss, Clockswork, Comrade Copperbottom, Emily-chan, Eric, Aaron the World Breaker, Frankie, Garland Chaos, Green Knight, Gloomba 331, Great Big Pillock, Groog, Hairbear, Harry the Ominous Benefactor, Howling Zangetsu, Iron Zero, Iskander 711, Carp, Mana Charge, Marion James E. Picata, Megacombi, Millennia Asta, Muzuki Clark, Nathan Vig, Natiel Lee Alexander, Orozco 09096, Panther J, Rebel King Lucifer, Red Eyes Jackalow, RJ the Jank Monarch, Sammy Haim, Serenity Towns, Skybuster Leo, That One Dumbass and the Wizard Moose, Cosmic Crusaders Alpha Sly, Almento 5010, A Random Pup, Ariel Kersey, Berin von Titty Sprinkles, Beluga Master, Blitzwolf, Blue Gem, Borger with the Shotgun, Callum McCann, Chaz Ghost, Childish Lamar, Dr. Reaper R.I.P., Drachenwald, Eki Bullock, Eva Padilla, Hike Boyagian, Herbal D, Ignis Heat the True Draco Slayer, Inblink, Jester Designs, Kale the Dragon, Kevon Public, Lemon Yu-Gi-Oh!, Manga Pages, Matt Simmons, Mick Spoofy, Michael Shimabukuro, Nitromo, Obsidian, Ramen Resurrection, Seawing 22, Shizuki Nijimura, Sophie, apparently, Stephen Williamson, Taylor Seymour, Terror Top to 3, The Pokemon 52, The Legendary Raven and Zaldreka, as well as the lovely Starlight Explorers you see on screen now. If you'd like to help me in my journey to cover all of Yu-Gi-Oh's archetypes, get my videos early, be a part of these credits and other awesome perks, it would mean the world to me if you could check out the link to my Patreon in the description or consider joining as a YouTube member. And if you'd like to see one of the themes this deck really meshes with, check out this video where I cover Fabled. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.